Hey, how's it going, everyone? 3D Painter here, back to you with another video. This time it's Ahsoka Tano by SW3D Studios, painted, of course, by yours truly. Ahsoka Tano was a female Togruta who was a Force-sensitive outcast from the Jedi Order. After the Clone Wars, she helped establish a network of various rebel cells against the Galactic Empire. Ahsoka was discovered on her home world of Shili by Jedi Master Plo Koon, he's the one who brought her to the temple on Coruscant to receive her Jedi training. And following the outbreak of the Clone Wars, Jedi Grand Master Yoda assigned Ahsoka to be the Padawan learner of, you guessed it, Anakin Skywalker, who also nicknamed her Snips when she joined him at the Battle of Christopsis. Tano was eager to prove herself there. Skywalker had a reputation for recklessness, and they had a rather difficult start as a master and apprentice, yet they worked together to rescue Rada, the son of crime lord Jabba. And basically, they returned Rada to his dad, thus facilitating a crucial alliance between the Hutt clan and the Galactic Republic. From there, the rest was history. So, there you have it with a little background on Ahsoka Tano. If you'd like to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the Clone Wars animated series. Absolutely fantastic animation and incredible storytelling. Super good fun. So, on with the video here. I am working on the base at this moment. As you saw earlier, I was adding some different washes and colors to start bringing that out as far as the rocks were concerned. And here I was just doing some dry brushing to bring out some highlights in the rocks. Next up, I'm just working on the, I guess the thorny root system that kind of surrounds the rocky outcrop that she's standing on. And I started off with, it's a beige, I forget the exact color, it's made by Pro Acryl. But anyhow, moving on, we're doing some dry brushing here, just getting the, adding some color to the roots. And after that, I'm gonna be highlighting the thorns with some deck tan and then doing some washes over that. So now to add some shade using this Coelia green shade, you use it kind of like the same way you would use Nuln Oil or any of the other shade colors that Citadel puts out. It's basically a wash, and I'm using that to get into all the little nooks and crannies and to add some depth to the root system there. You can see that pretty clearly right here how that works. You can apply it pretty liberally and spread it around. Use what you have on your brush. Here, just finishing up the root system, getting that going. Moving on, I'm gonna be, I think off camera, I painted the little lantern there. Now this was a little weird. I decided to try out Muso Black, which is the blackest paint in the world, supposedly. It blocks out about 97.8% of all visible sunlight. You can see there it's extremely matte, and I wasn't entirely happy with the way the Vallejo metal color dry brushed on top of that. So I decided to add a panel line wash on top of that to dull it out, because it was just way too powerful as far as the metal look was concerned. And you can see me doing that here, just applying that wash liberally and getting into all the little cracks and crevices to dull it out. Next up, we're working on our skin tones, starting off with the violet, purple, whatever that pinkle, whatever you want to call it, color is, to get the base for the skin tone down, and following that up with Dwarf Flesh by Vallejo, which I felt made a perfect skin tone for Ahsoka. She's got a bit of an orange tinge to her skin there. All the Togruta species in the Star Wars universe pretty much have the same skin tone, and I'm using that as my base. Just using 0.15 millimeter nozzle on my hard-earned Steenbeck Evolution CR Plus. Sorry, a 0.28 nozzle on that. Here I'm using my airbrush to add a skin wash to her tone, to her skin, to get a little more shadow, a little more depth and volume in her skin there. And you can see how that worked. And once I was finished, I went ahead and applied some Vallejo masking, the latex there, to cover that up, because now I'm going to start working on her outfit. So I wanted to keep that skin safe while we did that. And obvious choice for her outfit, even though her robes are supposed to be white, which I have to interject, it was a really tough call doing this model based on the different costumes that Rosario Dawson wore in the Ahsoka series. She had one costume that was black or gray, and then the other one was this choice that I made to do the lighter colored versions. It kind of struck me as her being a gray or like a white Jedi, neutral. You know, she'd already walked away from the Jedi Order and was kind of just roaming the galaxy on her own, looking for Admiral Thrawn. And I thought that it would be a fun challenge to do the white robes instead of the black. Black's just too easy. You know, it's really easy to bring up highlights and stuff from black, and I wanted a little more challenging. Just wanted it to be more challenging, so I chose this costume iteration. Used a lot of reference photos from online, from the series, and just different still shots that I captured from the cartoon series, or the animated series, I should say. I don't find there's a difference between animation and cartoons, and in the Clone Wars series there, that's definitely animation. The artwork is just absolutely phenomenal. So here I am with some dark gray blue by Pro Acryl, and I'm going to be using that to color her belt. I felt like it was just a good tone, and I haven't really used my Pro Acryl paints very much yet, so I figured this was a good one to use it for. It turned out to be the perfect hue of gray and blue that I could use without having to mix it up. And now I'm going to start working on the leatherings that are on her belt there. Kind of a decorative sash she's got wearing over her belt. And I painted that in deck tan first, and then went over it with the snakebite leather by Citadel. It takes really well on white, so using an off-white, such as deck tan, it worked out perfectly. It got the hue that I wanted. You'll get to see that close up a little later. It just worked. Citadel colors are always just a real pleasure to use. Now I'm gonna hit some grays here. Or no, that's silver. What color was that? There, I gotta reach over to my paint there. Now, it's an air paint by Citadel, and it's silver. Rune Fang Steel is what it was. Sorry about that. I didn't have easy access to my paints. Usually when I'm doing these narrations or the voiceovers, I can just reach over to my paint booth and grab the paint, because I'll remember what I used, and I'll just grab it, and that's how I remember what I used. Now I'm using the Vallejo Metal Color, which I highly recommend if you're ever in need of metal color besides steel or anything. This is just a little darker. It's dark aluminum is the name of the color, and it's 77.703 on the Vallejo scale, or whatever you want to call it. That's their label. But yeah, it's dark aluminum, and it just works really, really well, or it worked really well in this particular case for her armorings that are on her costume there. And now I'm just working on her gauntlets that she's got on her arms, using the same metal color by Vallejo. You'll see here in a minute I'm going to start working on some weathering, adding some Nuln Oil to grunge it up a little bit. And then here we're just doing the leather straps on the gauntlets. Got to hold them onto her arm somehow. Really love the way that snakebite leather works on leather stuff. It just works. Very little effort needs to be put into it. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. If you need to paint something that's supposed to look like leather, get on it. That stuff is awesome. Moving right along, just touching up these, I don't know what those are, side sashes. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll call them a side sash. I'm assuming it's kind of a protective leather or some sort of armor that she wears on her side to protect her hips and her upper thighs. I'm assuming it's got to be a functional piece of armor, so that's what we're doing now, using that same blue-gray by Pro Acryl. And now we're working on the shoes. I guess you could call them tabi boots. Tabi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The Japanese ninja shoes. I'm assuming that's kind of where they got the inspiration to do that with the split toe. And it worked very well with Ahsoka's costume. I totally dig it. Now I'm just marking out with deck tan these little decorative bead trimming things and going over the leather ties on her upper shirt there. Just being very delicate with it. A lot of fine detail on this model, I gotta say. SW3D Studios really knocked it out of the park with this one. I believe this was from their December term last year. I came in a little late and finally subscribed to SW3D Studios just to get this model. Turns out they're coming out with a bunch of really cool stuff, which I'm gonna have some surprises for you in the future. I am in the process of printing like a madman for one of their new releases right now. I'm super excited to do it. Give you one word hint is BOGO. That's your one word hint on an upcoming project, is BOGO. Anyhow, now I'm just grunging up her armor bits on her shins and her shoe coverings there. Gotta protect your feet, gotta protect those shins. And I'm just using Nuln Oil to get into those little cracks and crevices and add some depth and grunge to the armor. Didn't want it to look too shiny. Again, some Nuln Oil to add some texture to her side armor there, side sash, side armor. Man. And now I'm using that deck tan again to get the little lights that are on her gauntlets. I guess they can communicate. She can use those to communicate with people or something. Maybe I'm not sure. If you know what their function is, please leave a comment. Also like to thank all my new subscribers and new and old subscribers. Really appreciate you guys being here. It's an absolute pleasure and a total blast to be painting these models, not only for myself, but for you guys. And I really hope you're learning something from this. If you feel I've missed an answer to a question or skipped a detail that you need to know about, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments section. And by all means, like and subscribe if you like what you see here. Feel free to hit those bell notifications. That way I can you'll be notified anytime I drop a new video. So now I'm using this fun Creecall UV putty. This was a difficult part to deal with. I had a pretty big gap in her cape that I had to fill and kind of sculpt textured myself. And it turned out pretty good. I'm not 100% happy with it. There is a way to copy the print. You know, if you have a texture or something you need to copy, you can use a hot glue gun and basically make a stamp, and then you use a soft putty over the spot you need to cover up and do it that way. And here I'm just using this is what color was that? Drakenhof Nightshade. I'm using that to add some shadows and highlights to her cape, which later on I will be adding some object source lighting from her lightsabers. You'll see that coming up here in a little bit. I like it. Now on to the lightsabers. These were tricky. I didn't do LEDs because I don't know how yet, but I will be teaching myself how to do that before too long. So you can look forward to some of my future Star Wars models and other models having some lighting effects to them. So I'm excited to learn how to do that. But there we are again with snakebite leather, just getting her gloves taken care of here. And on to the armor with her hand coverings. I'll be doing the same and dirtying those up with a little bit of Nuln Oil. And now I'm using that metal color again on her lightsabers. I felt like it was a perfect match. Doing her Shoto lightsaber there. That's the short saber. Ahsoka Tano carries one long saber and one short saber. You can see why she switched over to that by watching the Clone Wars. They kind of show her progression in lightsabers as she ages. These were my favorite iteration of lightsaber that Ahsoka Tano uses. Very cool. Kind of the Japanese samurai influence there with her. And now I'm just using Tamiya panel liner to bring out some highlights and details on her lightsabers there. That stuff works really good. It's quite viscous, so it'll flow into cracks and crevices almost on its own. You can just blow on it even, and it'll find its way into spots. But yeah, worked really well on the lightsabers. I was really happy with the effect. And off camera, I'm going to go ahead and paint her fingers and get those taken care of. You'll see those later. Wasn't really too much to it, just hand painted in the same color I did her skin, and then added a skin wash over it, that dark skin wash. Excuse me. And moving right along to the lightsabers. Now, for these, I just used a really, really light blue by Roy Safar paint. It's an airbrush paint. And to give them the glowing effect, I just used a bright white, as you can see here, and just pretending that the blade was a square, I used the flat end of my brush to brush down one of each side of the lightsaber in that white, and it gave it a nice kind of blue-white glowing effect. I was really happy with the way it turned out. Definitely not as good as it would have if I could light them up, but yeah, it worked. So now we're ready to glue the hands on, and there they go. I'm using Glue Master's thick viscosity glue. And now it's time for our object source lighting. So to further sell the effect of the glowing lightsabers, I'm just airbrushing some bright white onto the surfaces of her robes there to make it look like they're giving off a glow from the lightsabers. And I did the same with her gauntlets and part of her hand, just a nice light white covering there to kind of imitate the glow from the sabers. And it worked. In person, it may not translate super well to camera, but in person it really sells the effect, and I was quite happy with it. So feel free to play around with that and give it a try. I did do some dry brushing of the white as well to soften up the glow. Now here we're doing our zenithal highlight on her head. Time to get ready for the portrait. It's always my most terrifying and favorite part of any model, really, is the portrait. And I'm just using a deck tan to give me that guideline, and I'm following that up with our purple, pink, pinkle color. And now on to the dwarf flesh by Vallejo. Great skin tone for Ahsoka. I thought it worked out perfectly. Just comparing different still shots and live action shots. I feel like I got the correct skin tone there, and I nailed it. I was happy about that. And here I'm just using a 0.28 millimeter nozzle on my Evolution to get some shadows on her skin, add some more volume and depth to it. And now for the tattoos on her face. So those were really tough. I tried to sketch them out in a marker at first, and it just wasn't working out. And I felt that the best way to do it was just to put myself under pressure and load up a brush with some paint and try to freehand it. So I used a couple different references, just still shots from the live action stuff, and just kind of wung it, eyeballed everything. It's not 100% perfect, but I really like the way it turned out. I was pretty pleased with myself as far as freehanding these guys. You can see on the face there, I don't have anything marked off. I'm just freehanding it. It was probably the most difficult part of her portrait by and far, was getting these tattoos to stick right, just to get them to work. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I'm stoked. You can see me there just kind of working back and forth and checking my symmetry and everything. A lot of back and forth, just double checking symmetry and then looking at the reference picture and looking back at her face. And yeah, on to the final cheekbone. I wouldn't say this particular part of the portrait is for beginners, but don't be afraid to try something. Like I said, I tried sketching it and it just wasn't working. The best way to do it was free. Now, I don't always start eyes off with like a darker color. Sometimes I'll just do the sclera in white outright. But for her eyes, since she's a 1/6 scale, they're very tiny, and to get the right details, I felt it was best to get that black in there first. It's a good way to outline the lower part of the eyelid. You can add some eyeshadow that way as well, which is kind of how I used it. Rosario was wearing some nice makeup in the live action series, and so I was going for that look. I wanted her to look pissed off, but a little elegant as well. So now after I finished her face up, I went ahead and covered her face with some latex and airbrushed in deck tan her head tails, or leku as they are called. And now I don't know if these markings on her leku are actually tattoos or if those are natural markings that the Togruta species draws, but for now we'll just call them leku tattoo. And that's what I'm doing here, is kind of going over those. The model, the sculpt did include lines. You can kind of faintly see those lines that they included in the part of the 3D print. And I wish they would have done that for the tattoos on her face. It would have made the tattoos a lot easier, but they didn't. And so at least I had some help with the leku. Some of them didn't match up right though, so I did have to freehand a little bit in there. But they're not supposed to be perfectly symmetrical and even, you know. I noticed that each one is a little different. So here's the final. I hope you enjoy some glamour shots. Much love to you all, and happy 3D printing, happy painting. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. Cheers.